Hey.
Yo, buddy.
Yeah, it sounded great.
We're in business?
I think we're in business. I'm gonna shit.
Let's
Mine's way
rock it.
louder on my end for some reason.
Really? On my headphones, we both sound even.
So weird. It sounded great on the recording, so we'll just go with that.
Okay.
All right. Well,
You record? You want me to record too?
yeah. Do it on the cloud or your computer. I don't know which one.
Okay. Just give me permission.
Fuck off.
My man, I need that permission.
You want that permission slip?
I want that permission slip, boy.
How do I do I like this. For permission.
Give me that permission, boy. I'll just give you some somber minor mode, some chords off the minor scale
So
for you to
somber. I
give me
like it. Is
permission.
that something you're working on?
Yeah, well, I've just been doing with a lot of my lessons. We've been getting into like modal theory pretty heavily, and kind of shout out Brownie, the modal king.
I had a lesson from someone today. Fuck, what is his name? Kevin, I think. Cool dude, and he's been taking lessons from Brownie
Cool.
regularly. And he asked about like tone and stuff, and I guess Brownie suggested taking a lesson with me as well. So
Tight.
on that, but he said I was like, oh yeah, Brownie with the Phrygian modes. He's like, yep, we're going over Phrygian.
Man, it
Yeah,
was so funny. Did you catch any of the Disco Biscuits stream last night from
I
Philly?
I popped into it a little bit today. I think.
Yeah, okay.
It's cool. They were all like facing in at each other like Pompeii.
Yeah, it was really cool. I gotta say, the production was really good. The audio was great. They sounded like they've all just been shedding and practicing and teaching, which was really cool. But what's funny is I was watching like Barber's Instagram story before, and they're all kind of like live on Instagram, walking out into the field, and Barber's like just filming in the back, and Brownie's going off about something on like, yeah, I'm gonna take like a modal solo, like I'll do some modes, and like turns back and sees the camera, and Barber's like, it's not all about modes, dude. Brownie's probably been spouting off about modes at all the practices and shit.
He's on
Uh,
mode right now.
he's in mode.
Mode mode.
But hey, man, it's cool. Like, it got me excited thinking about just like seeing more bands and what everyone's gonna sound like. Well, everyone's kind of been like honing in their own personal sound and everything, and then when you get to bring that to the live setting, it'll be exciting to see, especially for bands that improvise heavily.
Yeah, yeah. I was dealing with that myself. The more I practice, the more I'm working on shit. The more I'm like, fucking, I suck. I have a lot of things to 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 develop. And then I remember there's like a feel element that I have that's cool and different. But especially when we did our streaming thing in the studio we've recorded at.
Yeah.
And so when you're really breaking it down and hearing everything exactly as it is, they're in the control room like, it sounds great, but I'm just hearing in my in ears like all the mistakes and all like the dead notes and
Right.
this fucking sucks. And then I listen to the recording later, I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah, totally. Well, all right. So I have some questions, obviously, about Homefest for you. But before we get into that, because I'm very curious about the whole process. It was awesome. Congrats, by the way.
thank you.
Um, just going back to that modal thing, it's like, and what we were kind of talking about, it's like the more we're teaching, we're doing podcasts, we're talking with more musicians than ever, really, and it's different than just on the road. But it's like the more you realize, the more you learn, the more you realize you have a lot to learn.
Exactly.
And that's probably with anything. I can only speak like really specifically about music, and especially bass. But every time I get into a concept and we start to explore it in the lessons, I'm like, man, there's so much more I need to do, and so much deeper I can dive into this. And that's like exciting. It can be intimidating, but when you're working on shit every day and you kind of can like accept like, okay, well, I'm not going to I'm not going to check off everything on my checklist or reach all my goals overnight. But if I have an idea of what I'm going for, I can keep working at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was kind of like, just to get back to that modal thing, like that's, modal improv and stuff is, we've talked about it a bit on the podcast. It's like an essential part to playing, and especially improvising and in the jam band scene and the jazz scene, and even to an extent, like some of the rock scene and dub and, reggae and stuff like that. Um, but these modes, like, when I was at Berkeley, it was like, yeah, the modes, you got to know the modes, make sure you know the modes, and they teach you the modes and they teach you all the positions in C major, and you go, okay, I know the modes. I can play D Dorian now. Good. I know the modes. Like, no, you can play a mode. That doesn't. That's like kind. That's your that's your toolbox, and now you can go and study the modes.
I
And
was
you're
talking,
not gonna know the modes maybe ever. Like,
yeah,
but it's the tip of the iceberg.
I was talking to my
Uh,
student about that. It's like learning your multiplication tables instead of having to sit there. What's 7 times 3? Like, okay, it's 21. Okay, but how do you different? What's the
how do you get
differential
there?
calculus of a fucking ball thrown in the air and curving down? You got to know a lot more than just what 7 times 3 is. But if you don't know what 7 times 3 is off the bat, you're really
Right.
held back.
You need that basis to be able to
To
get
be
back
the
to
basis.
basics. And so, like, for the modes, though, for me, it's always C major. And so I've been really trying to get into um, practical application of the modes in ways that I can, so some of my students are starting to play with their bands again and get together and, like, just like limited capacities or just rehearse or even just writing over the internet and emails and stuff. And, like, what can I give them that they can immediately apply to their personal playing and their band playing?
Mm-hmm.
And just like modes of the minor scale, I think are such an important thing that that like get overlooked because they're all the same modes, right? The modes don't they're with the major and minor scale. It's always that Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, etc. But they start at a different place. Your one is now minor. Your one is Aeolian. And I think it's important to think that way, especially considering how often we as bassists or just musicians play in minor keys. I mean, how often are you really playing in C major?
Yep.
And that's every bassist that you have for modal theory is C major. And it's like, I never play in C major.
No.
So like I was having a lesson with my buddy David Wolfson. Shout out. He plays in a band Dysfunct Tone based out of Long Island, and they're starting to get together and they're making some music, which is awesome. And I was like, what are some keys you play in a lot? And he's like, G minor is a pretty common one. And I was like, great. So let's do the modes based off the G minor scale and just kind of either doing arpeggios or doing like chordal things. So if you're playing just chords with the Picardy thirds or the minor tenths, it would be this. And I was like, look, already it just sounds like a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. So like, so I've been trying to be like, rather than just practicing that all over the neck, like let's do something musical with it that's fun to practice. So I just kind of wrote this little ditty that I've been showing some students that goes up the minor scale using these thirds, but in more of a chordal context and little kind of improvised lines using the modes within them. So just to give you a little taste. And you can just keep going up and etc.
Now it
But
sounds like a Chili Pepper song if Frusciante was playing bass.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
Like scar tissue, man. He's doing those minor tens on that. But yeah, so that's been really exciting and it's been really fun because it's been something that I've always known that I have a lot of area to grow in that. And already have just been applying it with like solo stuff and writing more. And then just the few times that we've gotten together with Le Special, just we've been improvising more and not and trying to write more. And it's all, you don't want to like necessarily be conscious of music theory while you're playing. You want to use it more as like an analysis for afterwards. But like you said, if you know your multiplication table, if you have all of this theory, you're not thinking about it. And that's the goal. The goal is to have it embedded in you and not be consciously aware of it. Just like let it happen.
Yeah,
but it's been super exciting. Yeah.
With pigeons, a lot of what we do with jamming is just we're in Mixolydian and then we go to the 2, and up to the 6 maybe, or move around. Or
right.
One thing I realized early on is I'm switching between the 6 and the 2, just adding that flat 6 there or taking it away. I considered it going a little more major, a little more minor, fully, whatever. When you first said what Brownie was saying, excuse me, about the modes, on some level I'm thinking, yes, there's a lot more besides modes, but really, what else is there besides modes? Like, it's kind of obviously there's so much more other elements to work into it, but there's a reason he's so on about it. And Barber, of course, is right. There's a lot more to it, but until you fully explore that realm, you can't really go to the next. I mean, obviously you can go to the next level in different things, but there's just that map needs to be kind of drawn out in your head and figured out. And the more I'm practicing, the more I'm learning. Again, I'm understanding the real limitations of my knowledge. I have a good ear and a good feel, and I know what to like listen for. And that now that I'm kind of stepping back and developing other strengths at a more intellectual and logical level, I'm starting to see like, oh, this is where my ear was taking me. It's taking me to, this mode, but then maybe a whole step up, or like, half step change or whatever it might be. And so the joy for me, with a slightly better ear, is to understand what I'm hearing and why I'm hearing it. And that's really helping me with my songwriting, because it not only gives me directions to go, but it also helps me justify what I'm hearing in like a song. Like, well, I think it should hold on this E here, or like we should go from the G drop down to the E because it sounds right. And then I'm understanding more why it could work.
Yeah, and just understanding why that notion of why does it sound right? Why does my ear want to go to it? And that's obviously like a multifaceted answer. Like a lot of it is cultural and just in American music and what we've grown up listening to on the radio and rock and roll and the blues and shit like that. But yeah, there's all that whole theoretical like subtext about it. Well, that the 5 naturally sounds like it wants to resolve to 1.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, well, but the 5 sounds like it wants to resolve to 1 because that's what like Western harmony was founded on.
Exactly.
The classical music is based on the concept of 5 dominant to 1 major. So it's an interesting conversation about, theory. Is it a mathematical thing? Is it a cultural context? Is it both? Is it just like a willingness, a human kind of shared emotion that we want to hear? Once I hear this, I know I want to get that release of, I mean, where does that come from?
Play the major there. How does that sound?
Well, so if I'm in G minor and my 1 chord is a G minor, is a Aeolian, then my flat 7 is a Mixolydian, which would be a major 10th. And then my flat 6 is also major. So those are 2 tenths, and it's a Lydian chord, so it's a major chord, and then up to a Mixolydian chord, but they both have that same desire to resolve to the 1 minor.
But then if you land if that minor becomes a major instead.
Right, yeah. Now you're getting into like parallel like majors and minors.
That's when you said like the 5 resolves to the 1.
Right.
What if the 5 resolves to a new 5 where the 1 would be, so
right.
You're
yeah, totally. And then you get into like jazz concept turnarounds and setting up key changes, putting a new 5 chord. Yeah, there's so many cool different
but that's
ways to analyze it, or to that your brain goes to. There's like, it's that weird step of, okay, we talked about it a little bit last time, like it might have even just been after our podcast when we were just kind of like jamming and talking about this stuff.
That was really fun.
Yeah, it was great. I know. I kind of wish that it got recorded, but we'll do more of this workshop stuff just to get it in there. It is a bass podcast. We should be playing some bass.
Nah.
But there's that part of your brain that goes, okay, this wants to go to this chord. So I hear that. I'm going to do that. But then there's that, well, what if I try something different? Is there then a give and pull? Does it not sound right? Does it sound cooler because it's not what you expected? And I mean, that's kind of just like the fun of songwriting and just coming up with
exactly. That's where it's a combination of physics and psychology and art.
Yeah.
All at once. Like you're dealing with physics and like this note is here, this is a major third, this is a minor third, but then there's choices you make. And I found with writing, especially when I started playing more on piano, and I think the first song I was messing around with was When It Rains It Pours. I've said that before, with that E major instead of an E minor that would be in scale.
Right.
A lot of this like popular music that we hear is just slightly unexpected. So
right.
It's like, okay, I'm expecting.
Right.
But then you like that one song I've been working on,
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah,
exactly. Just like
exactly.
one little bit off. I originally just like kind of like major, minor, like it's pretty standard. And I'm just playing it backstage, and Jeremy's like, "Oh, well, try that a half step up." And it's like, emotionally lifts you up. It's off, but then it lands you right back where you need to be, and that's like that fuck yeah moment where you're like, okay. And the going back to the modes, it's almost like anything you want to describe on some level you could probably describe in the form of modes, where you're going from the 2 to a 5, the 5 becomes a 1, and then you turn into this. Obviously there's going to be some exceptions, but if you went really roundabout, you could probably describe anything you want using the modes somehow. Obviously the harmonic minor starts to move things in a different direction.
Different modes come into play. Yeah.
But I guess it's that kind of thing. Like you said, the more you explore, the more you realize that there's more to explore.
Yeah.
And that sort of gets you into that place where it's like, well, how much can I truly understand and work with and learn? And I think that's where Brownie's at with it. He's like, there's so much you can work with within modes. It's almost having that constraint allows you to do more. Whereas Barber is like, all right, bro, I did that 15 years ago. I'm good.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah, he's kind of like over talking about it. But then it's also like, I know Barber is doing lessons and stuff, but not as many as Brownie. I mean, Brownie's been putting a lot of time into these live lessons. He made a post the other day, over like 100 lessons, over the past few months. So his brain is in that thinking thing, and like mine is too. It's like I'm just on, I was on Amazon the other day, and I just like, I'm gonna get a scales mode book. So I got this.
Boom.
Just get a fucking book. It's pretty like, it's pretty basic. It's kind of like just shows you what every mode is, like starting on every note, and it's like, well, it's the same on all the like, you can put it anywhere. But hey, it's nice to just like have a tangible thing.
That's the nice thing about bass versus piano for me. On piano, each note, you start on a different note, a different scale. It's going to be different how you play it.
Different positions.
It's patterns, and that's something that I'm delving more into. Ever since I got into bass versus piano and like seeing songs in different ways. It's like, okay, piano's sort of more absolute in a way, whereas bass is more relative. I don't know if I'm saying that.
Yeah, no, I'm forgetting the word too. That where if you know a major scale shape, you can put that anywhere.
Yep.
And it's that same. It's a shape. It's a pattern, like you said.
Right.
Piano for me was always more difficult because I had to memorize within the context of the black and the white keys. I was so used to, as playing bass and guitar my whole life, every shape is the same no matter where you put it. And piano always gave me more trouble like that.
I think that's sort of why I see music and hear music the way I do, is because I was forced to use my ear a lot more on piano. Like I sort of let it develop the way it should and just kind of found the right spots. And even now when I play, like I'm in G major or C, sometimes if I'm feeling crazy, I'll go to D, whatever.
So when you're picturing music theory in your head, if you're talking about like a scale or just something like that, are you picturing it at a keyboard setup or are you picturing a bass fretboard?
Now I'm picturing a bass, but until 5 years ago, I think I was still thinking keys.
That's interesting because that forever for me, it was always bass and guitar. That was what I learned. And so even like music theory in high school all the way up through courses at Berkeley and like advanced harmony and stuff like that, like I applied everything just to my bass, which I get isn't always the easiest way to get to an answer.
Well, it's not even that's the easiest or less easy. It's just a different way of looking at it. If you're looking at
it's a different perspective.
You're looking at it from this direction versus that direction.
Right.
It's just a different place, and you get different angles, and like this is now not a straight ahead triangle. It's or like you're under here, you're over there.
It's a new perspective. You're seeing some things you didn't see before.
Yeah. So that's why I've really appreciated and enjoyed both. But when I picked up my mom's acoustic guitar, 14 years old or something like that, maybe 13 or 14, I was like, yeah, I want to be a rock star. And I picked up this guitar, and I just started trying to learn it. I'm like, fuck this. This is making me feel way stupider than I know I am. And in a way, I wasn't, not that I was stupid, but like I just didn't think that way, and I hadn't had that.
Right.
Okay, this is the straight pattern, and then you add these.
You were being introduced to a new thought process as well as a completely new physical standpoint.
Good on that. And then I picked up the bass at my friend's birthday party. I'm like, okay, this one is a little more. It's the pattern that stays the pattern. The piano is completely, whatever. The accidentals are all over the place. The black notes, white keys, and I just like learned how to play it. I'd learn a song, I'd play it. I wasn't really delving into the theory as much, but I was getting a feel for it. And then I picked up the bass. And it's like, this one I get. It's patterns, First pattern I learned. And then adding in the
blue scale. Can you move your camera down a little bit just so you can see your fretboard a little better?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
So, the blues.
Yep, the first scale everyone learns, yeah.
So that's the first scale I learned on bass, but on piano I was learning, the major scale, and I didn't practice.
Right.
Or anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like a stylistic thing. When I learned the blues scale, my teacher in high school was like, this is the only scale you'll ever need to use as a bass player.
That's exactly what my bass teacher, who shout out Dave DeMarco, I'm taking lessons with him again. He's very, awesome. Very helpful. What were we talking? You were talking about something earlier that I guess it was like chord tones and keeping things in scale. Like I asked him like how does he improvise? He's a more progressive-y type stuff, and just kind of showing how he'll take and just like land on certain chord tones that don't establish, and then let the keyboardist take it where he wants to go, and then he'll catch on to
Right.
it too. So I mean, that's the modes. Going back to that again,
Right.
are sort of
And
like
he's probably been just learning it and playing it for so long
yeah,
that
they're
it's
just
like
like
he's not thinking in a
right.
applying
It's the way to connect.
terms
It's like
for
you're
them.
finding that like you're the lock in a tumbler, and you have to go in. They all line up till you can turn the key.
Right.
Sort of musicians working together, they can kind of use whatever form of communication, but modes are very helpful to line you all up on the same place, and you turn the key, and you open the
Right.
door, and then you come to the next door. It's like, okay, now we got to line back up and turn it, and that's
Right.
to
And
me,
that's the fun of improvising with people, right? And not just yourself.
that's
And
really
I was
locking in.
thinking about that. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that watching some of the Biscuit stream last night, because there are and just obviously from talking with Brownie and the live lesson master and knowing how busy he's been on it, like I was curious to see how that would affect like their playing and improvising. And a lot of times Brownie's got the sub octave, he's playing those like 4 to the floor house trance bass lines, and like yeah, that's his trademark, that's where he grooves, that's where he plays. But they were getting into some of these more almost like abstract free jazz things, like that Magner has that jazz background, and I love hearing them like get into this jazzy space. And then it's like, okay, now maybe when Brownie's just kind of like holding down that, like he's not thinking, okay, that's an Aeolian mode. It's like, no, that's just a root minor third flat seven, a thing that we all play. But then when Magner starts playing some of these like borrowed chords or notes that sound outside of whatever scale or mode they were playing in, you could almost see like the gears turning, and they were like listening and playing off each other in that new context. And it's cool. Yeah, it's just cool to see a band like that like is still practicing and learning.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's kind of what's
and
cool about this whole time is it's forcing everyone to step off of the they created a car that goes like you get into this fucking go-kart and just drive, and like, okay, this is what I do, this is what I do well, and this is what I can do. And now everyone's kind of had to put their car in the shop for a little bit, or set it aside or not drive
right,
it. It's like, okay, well, how can I build a better car? And that's what
right.
we're sort of all looking at. Like, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and I know for me it's sort of the same thing. It's like, okay, I can do this slapping, like the fun, like groovy, like feel stuff, but there's certain define, like like
Incorporating
little
more chords and just some more
words, or even
things that
like
aren't just octaves or
different
or are
rhythmic
or the
things.
regular things we fall back on.
Exactly, but I've gotten so used to falling back, and it's like, well,
Yep.
I have to play a show, and this is what I do, and this is what the people want on some level. Even though I'm telling myself that it's more of just an
Well,
excuse.
you have a sound and a style with yourself within the context of your band that there is an expectation for.
Right, but it's also, it's an excuse to not go out of the comfort zone, which is something I have struggled with over the years. I
Sure.
love going out of the comfort zone, and now that I've found a place that is comfortable, I think part of it is I hadn't found a comfort zone yet as much.
Yeah.
I was moving around a lot more. Now that I'm sort of finding it, I settle into that a bit more. But now that I'm stepping outside of it, I can always fall back to that. I have that foundation of like, this is what I can do that I know will be good. Going
Yeah.
back to our Home Fest stream, I was
Yeah.
worried leading up to it. I haven't played in a while. I haven't, yeah, I've been practicing on my own, but I hadn't played with the band, hadn't played in front of a crowd. I was like, am I any good anymore? Am I still, can I still do cool stuff? Is it still going to be fun? And just
Am I still funky?
yeah, and just by playing with the guys and listening and just not putting the pressure on myself, it's like just be part of the vibe and just serve the whole the feel of the whole thing. And then I listened back to it. I was like, okay, I got some cool stuff I was doing.
Settling into your role again. Like you have to find you stepped away from your role and now you
Right,
have to
but then but by
find that
stepping away,
that comfort
you see it,
zone.
you're seeing it from a different angle, and then you come back into it and just kind of step up in small ways. But then you kind of fall back to where you are. It's sort of like you're behind yourself, pushing yourself forward. This is where I can't go back anymore because I've gained myself to this point. But as
Yeah.
you're jumping out here, you're never going to fall back down past this, because it's like, okay, now I can just kind of settle into that.
Right.
What's worked well while you're strengthening other things.
You have to break that comfort zone to even realize that you had it to begin with.
Exactly.
It's so easy to go like, yeah, well, I fall back on my own things, but you don't know what those things are until you play something else, you
Yep.
know? And I mean, the main thing that my students say are and that's something that I can relate to. I'm sure you can. I'm sure every bassist can. Every musician, anybody just listening to this podcast, it's like you want to break out of old habits. You want to break out of the things that you fall back on that feel comfortable. You want to try new things. You want to explore new things. And so getting to that concept with a lot of the lessons, it's been about, well, how do we break out of that box? And so the box for bassists are the blues scale or minor pentatonic. If we're in a D minor modality, which for someone like me and the special, D minor is a common key. So if this is your chord, it's a D chord. How do we get out of just doing a? How do we get out of that minor pentatonic? Well, one thing that you can do is, like, instead of just starting on the root, if we're getting this D minor chord, well, yeah, your blues scale it'll work, but let's think about avoiding the root. Let's think about breaking out of that box. Well, if you go up to the flat 3 in a D minor scale, the flat 3 is Ionian. It's a major chord. So rather than starting with a D minor pentatonic or a D minor 7 arpeggio, what if we start with an F major 7 arpeggio? And you get this more interesting timbre, this more... And already it's interesting. It's different than what you'd think. And you haven't played the root, but you played an arpeggio that works.
Yep, it's kind of like bringing you over here a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. It's working within the extensions of the chord. And a lot of the stuff I've been diving into, I would highly recommend everyone check out this awesome video with Felix Pastorius called Mastering the Fretboard. And it's featured on Scott's Bass Lessons, like a clip of it is. But he is incredibly smart and talented, but just incredibly hardworking. You can tell. I mean, he's got this 6-string bass, and he's just drilling through modes effortlessly. But talking about this soloing on the 3rd degree, and I mean, it can be if you're in a major key, if you're in a G major, let's say. So if we're in a, oh yeah, I like how a glitchy G major. So if you're in a G major, rather than doing a G major 7 arpeggio, well, let's go to the 3rd degree. In G major, the 3rd degree is a B, and that's our Phrygian mode, right? Our good old Brownie's favorite mode. But even not thinking about a mode, the chord or the arpeggio based off that would be a B minor 7. So start improvising in G major with a B minor 7. And already it's just a little bit more interesting. You're using these tensions and extensions of the chord rather than the root, which we're so ingrained as bass players to play.
Especially because, again, like the blues scale. But that's another good example of what the bass can do in a song.
Right.
Sort of additively or subtractively. Where a chord, you have just the 7 chord. That could be...
you can play Mixolydian licks over it.
Yeah, all sorts of different things, and that'll change it around versus like a pedal chord where I'm staying on one note and the guitars kind of fall onto it. So that's when the root becomes even more powerful. Is you can go off it, and I've sometimes my ear has been telling me to go off these notes, and Jeremy or Greg will say, like, remember the Motown, like landing on it and staying there is going to be more powerful, and I'll still kind of fight against it a little bit. Like, well, what if you just kind of instead of holding it, you just kind of roll up to it?
Sure, throw some passing tones to get there.
Yeah, and you're still kind of holding it down, but it's like where do you hold that root and where do you go away from it? And the interesting thing about the bass is how much that affects the entire tone of the song. When you were playing in the major and you were playing the minor, it had this kind of wistful feel, and then when you were in minor playing major, it had this kind of just took you up a little bit in a different direction.
Right.
Yeah.
You want the root to feel like home base. You don't want it to get boring, you know? And if you're starting every bass line on the root or a solo or whatever, it's going to become, I mean, you can still make it interesting rhythmically and tastefully, and there's plenty of music that does, of course, but this concept of modo playing, it's using the root, go to these different places, go to these different extensions, try and, make conjure up different emotions, either in your listener or yourself, whatever your goal is for the piece. And then when you go back to the root, then it feels like home. Then it feels like, nice, I'm back where I belong. And that's just kind of That's the power of music is going on a journey, right? Going somewhere and then
It's not a
getting back home.
it's not a resolution if you started there and you stayed there the whole time.
Exactly. There's no tension and resolution, right? That's like
That's what
fundamentals.
when I'm investigating or digging into popular songs or just any songs, like what makes it good. It's that it's mostly normal and mostly what the ear is expecting, and then it just turns you at this one part, and then you land right at this next part, and you're like,
Right.
okay, wait, okay, we're here, we're back together, and we're in
Right.
this. It's when I first like understood um, music more like Umphreys or you guys, where it's like a lot more going on, and it kind of builds up this tension. And when I was younger, I was like, well, why can't it just be beautiful all the time? Just be nice. And I realized it's because you're delving into this kind of psychological aspect where you make the person slightly uncomfortable to bring them back to the comfort, and you're doing that as a group, especially in live music.
Yeah.
Together, everyone kind of is like, oh, I feel awkward, and then you're like, wait, now I feel great. And not only is it like a little bit awkward, you're also just like, holy shit, look at these guys fucking rip right now doing.
Yeah. Well, no, dude, I appreciate hearing you say that about us and Humphreys. They're a band that does that so well. That's just like something I don't really get, I guess. And we're not even limited to just like jam band music culture, but just in general, like there's tension and release. There's no release without the tension. And if every song is in a major key and is happy and so on, that hey, if that's the vibe and that's what people want, then there's nothing wrong with that. But isn't it more effective if you take that emotion away, or you exacerbate it, or there's give and pull? Just the concept of tension and release. I mean, I'm somebody that I like film scores a lot because of that. And film scores and movies are supposed to be the emotional, the score to your emotion. The music in a movie tells you what emotion you're supposed to be experiencing, whether or not the dialogue or the screen is showing you that. So that tension, like Hans Zimmer, I was watching like The Dark Knight the other night, and every time the Joker's on screen, Hans Zimmer has this like sound that's and I've listened to him talk about it. I know he's gone through hundreds of sounds, like trying to find what's the most unpleasant sound. But the way he does it with the sound design in Dark Knight is incredible because you hear it so quietly. It's like when you hear like a mosquito, like kind of, oh God, is that fucking thing coming towards my ear? And then it keeps bubbling up and the tension keeps coming. And by the time you see Heath Ledger in this makeup and the music, I mean, it's such an intense moment. And I love that tension and like this kind of scale or modality or whatever that we have some new music in that I've been writing that's going to be on our new album. Is this like weird chromatic scale that has a lot of tension. It's based like a lot of it's in D minor, and it's got like an unstable tonic. So there's a D, then there's a flat second, and then there's a major seventh or a leading tone, and then there's the root. But so when you put them together, it get, you know what I mean? And if you were to put like a reverse effect or something and play all three of them, and now you've got three like clashing tones happening at the same time. It's definitely unsettling and intense. But then when you kind of just, that's your root, right? So it's this. It's very chromatic. It's very, it doesn't have a clear major or minor feel. It's more of just kind of a, a lot of those different kind of modes, like the whole tone scale and half diminished. When people equate emotions to music and they talk about, well, major is happy, minor is sad. And it's like, well, why, first off, why do we feel that way? Is that a cultural thing? Is that a music thing? Adam Neely had a great conversation on the Mr. Bill podcast. I think I sent you a link for it. And it was kind of back to this concept that we were talking about a little while ago, just like, when we hear these things and we have these expectations of this chord should resolve to this chord makes me happy, this chord makes me sad, is that like a wiring in our brain? Is that a mathematical equation in music? Or is that just cultural? Well, we grew up, and when we saw a character die in a movie, when Bambi's mom died, we heard a minor chord. So as kids, we go, well, now minor chords are sad. So that's interesting to think about.
Well, let's delve more into that, because that's very fascinating for me, and that's kind of what a lot of my interest is. Is there an inherent happiness to a major scale?
Right.
Or is it relative?
I mean, when they're talking about this, and so I can't take credit for all this. Adam Neely, I've been deep diving into his stuff, and he is brilliant, and I'm definitely taking some of this from him.
Please.
Yeah, and well, he's saying, it's both, but yeah, I mean, it's cultural. when you look at like kind of the origins of Western music, you go to like Gregorian chant, and if people don't know Gregorian chant, I mean, that's like kind of choir chanting. The easiest like pop culture reference I could come up with. Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, my man knows some Gregorian chant. All right,
It's actually
dude.
a little off of it. It's very, very basic, and it served religion. It was like a religious,
Right.
which is what music kind of is for me today, and what it is for a lot of people. It is kind of like a getting in touch with this ethereal, like divine aspect, whether or not you want to call it God or believe in, a dude with a beard in the sky, or just like this higher energy. And
I believe in a dude with a beard and a bandana and a schwa bandana in front of me.
This thing? Oh,
That's what I believe in.
yeah, yeah. What's that about the Runa that I'm drinking with the shirt and everything?
Dude, full endorsement mode today.
I'm locked in. Yeah, I've been listening to in terms of podcasts I've been listening to, Bad Friends with Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee.
Okay, I don't know it.
Alex told me about it. Gator.
Cool.
I mean, Andrew Santino is a comedian. He's been on Joe Rogan, and he like tours with him and stuff. And then Bobby Lee was on Mad TV. You'd recognize.
Oh,
him.
Bobby Lee. Yeah, Bobby Lee's awesome. Yeah, totally. What's the podcast called again? One more time.
Bad Friends.
Bad Friends.
Bad Friends. Fucking hilarious. It's a laugh out loud moment.
Awesome. Oh, great.
Like shooting the shit. But they're more sponsored. They've been to this point, and they have their like advertisements and stuff.
Right.
And I don't feel like we're necessarily not at that point or at that point, but I enjoy just the plugging things, even though we're not getting paid for it or anything. It's just like
we can just keep plugging and making endorsements. If it makes our podcast seem more official, then I am all for it.
It's more official, and it's just we're doing a service for the world.
Sure, man. Hey, I mean, I always dug that about Joe Rogan. Like his sponsors are products that he uses that he can like. Yeah, exactly.
That was their first sponsor. I don't know if he actually used it, but he would give it away to guests. Each time he'd have a guest, be like, "Here, take a free fleshlight."
Right, I forgot that. Wow, I mean that's pretty enticing for guests.
Yep. Now he's going on Spotify. So.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. All right, so yeah, let's get back to this Gregorian chant because it is wild.
Yeah.
And the thing about Gregorian chant is that it was a lot of minor scales, like. And if you would equate a mode, a lot of it's a Dorian mode, a minor scale with that raised 6. So it's not, you don't quite have that like menacing tension of the flat 5 to the 6, which if you don't really know modes that well, the Dorian is a minor mode is. But Dorian mode is a minor scale with a raised 6. So it sounds like. So you don't have that.
What Holly calls Trey minor?
Trey Minor. I love that.
Dorian, yeah.
That was a great nugget for our first episode. Or our first guest. But so, yeah, that kind of... That tension kind of the flat 6 to the 5 isn't in Dorian. And I feel like that's in a lot of Gregorian chant. Because it's got a minor third. It's got like a creepy, ominous quality. And especially just like these reverbed voices in a cathedral.
Yep.
But there's also something to it where it doesn't sound... like satanic or something, or where like, the diminished fifth in the church was like a banned interval. It was the devil's interval. Black Sabbath came out and shit like that. What'd you say?
That's rock and roll.
The rock and roll, all dude, flat fifths up for days. And yeah, if you've listened to the special, we're quite fond of that interval. But yeah, right, it's like so why did the church come up with that interval? Why is that the no interval? Why is that the Satan conjuring interval? Is it just because it has a sound that's demonic? Is that inherent, or is that because religion told us that hundreds of years ago?
Does heaven major sounds and hell's minor?
I think heaven's Mixolydian.
Yeah, I would say
heaven's got to be Mixolydian.
And then hell's Dorian, right?
Dominant 7. Hell's Dorian. I would say hell is like harmonic minor.
Oh yeah, fair enough. That's the fun part.
Yes, exactly. I love harmonic minor.
So yeah, I guess when they were doing the Gregorian chants, like, what message were they trying to get across? Like, fear God, fear religions. They wanted to be a little dark, but still don't be too unapproachable.
Yeah,
And I guess that's sort of
interesting.
like
If that was like the concept of it, how do we make people fear God and join our religion, but know that it's gonna be okay if you do?
right, and it's not necessarily that they wrote music with that in mind, but maybe that it evolved that way. That people were like, yes, this is good. We like this because of what it represents. So you have your
Right.
so just as it's culturally passed down. Like we heard a sad song in Bambi when the mother died, so we liken it to sadness. Is it
Right.
also that we've heard sad stuff as we're evolving with music, and we're like, this feels like the feeling I'm feeling? So does it go both
Right.
directions, where we, you know, have decided, but also it just reflects our internal state. So it really is interesting to wonder which came first, or
Yeah, I mean it's the chicken
why.
or the egg concept, right? It's
Right. There's
yeah.
something inherent about the. It's just more. It's less dissonant. Although I'm out of tune right now, so that's a little dissonant.
There's it's true. If you want to almost get it like right for somebody that studies physics, right? I mean, dissonance is wavelength. Dissonance is a tangible quality that we experience every moment. Two notes together, that maybe yeah, that's major third. There's no dissonance there. But if we want to do a sharp four and a leading thing, there's dissonance. We can hear there's a physical vibration that is created from dissonance. So is it human nature that dissonance is the physical experience that we inherently don't want to avoid, or that makes us feel unsettled? I think there is an element of that.
Makes me realize it goes back to like music emulating the sounds of nature, like the sounds of whatever it sounds like when you're in utero. You're hearing a lot of like low end come through, so
Right.
That's something you pick up on early. So there's a soothing tone of like bye and good
Right.
night. It's sort
Yeah.
of like grumble and like whatever you're hearing sounds from outside, they're muffled.
And very vibrational. You're experiencing that through the vibrations of being in a womb.
And then when you hear like thunder cracking and like rain, or like bird song is like happy and pretty. Birds don't have cultural passing down, but they make pretty
Right.
songs so they can fuck. Like that's the whole
Right.
point.
Mating calls. Yeah, and it's an interesting point you bring up about the are we conditioned? Are we we're born, it's tabula rasa, it's a clean slate. We have no prejudices or biases or things like that, and those are introduced to us through culture, through our parents, through everything. It's like I have two basset hounds, Claude Rouge and Frankie. Shout out.
Shout
And
out.
Claude Rouge is the homie. I gotta get him in here. He's just this big floppy, just like love machine. Just loves being touched. Just if you're petting him and you stop, he starts nudging your arm to pet him again.
Like, fuck you.
And as he's gotten older, he's become like very frightened of like lightning and gunshots. And where we live, there's like a gun range on Sundays where they're like shooting guns, and it's loud. If we have all the windows open in the house, it's loud. And he hates it, and he starts panting and he's sweating and he can't like get settled. And same with thunder. He starts panting. And like he did it a little bit when he was younger, but it keeps getting more intense. And it's like, so what is that? Is that, I know it's different. A basset hound is different than a human brain. As my dad says, don't try and get in the mind of a basset.
In some ways.
But it's like, is he just getting older and more sensitive, and just these loud sounds are unsettling for him? Or you know what I mean? I mean, it's
Yeah, so
very different, but
each time he gets anxious hearing a loud sound, it drives that in even more. It's like, I hear this loud sound, I feel anxious. And next time is like, oh yeah, last time I heard a loud sound, I felt anxious. So now I'm more anxious, not just from the sound, but for how it made me feel.
right.
And that sort of drives it in with like humans too. Like you hear this nice, lovely sound and it makes you feel good. So you keep driving it that way. And that, for me growing up, why I was a soft, fluffy kid. And so I didn't like that kind of like,
No pitch squeals.
yeah, just like in general, just like all that, that hard testosterone driven stuff. I didn't have a lot of testosterone. I was a sweet little boy with a mischievous, fucked up approach to a lot of things, but in a
You
good
still
way.
are.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I've learned over time to appreciate that more. But when I was younger, it was just like, I just want to hear the nice, like the pretty parts of it, but you realize that it really is in relation. And just like the major and minor are in relation to each other, the music and the human psyche are also in relation to each other. It's not that one is the root of the other. It's about where you start. If you're starting from the perspective of
Right.
music versus if you're starting from the perspective of the human psyche, it's gonna, you're starting on the one, or you're starting on the five, or you're starting on the two. It's just a different perspective of where you're looking at the same thing, and it's, I guess that's why I feel obviously have so much to learn in music, but I also still I have my whole journey in music as sort of like a an aspect of the whole journey of understanding of life in the world, because it is just a different way, it's a pure language, it's a pure way of communicating emotions.
Mhm.
But it shows you a lot, but there's, on some level, it's just like another starting point, another launch.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that the cultural side of it is really important. I think that, for you saying even just growing up as a kid, like you gravitated more towards feel good major key music and not like, heavy shit. I was listening to like Slipknot and Korn and System of a Down, like, and
I did
Nirvana,
listen
and
to Corn. Let's get
yeah,
yeah,
we
that's
all listen, we
that
all listen to Korn.
that's feel good all day, baby.
Yeah, well, dude, you're kind of the fieldy of the jam band scene. I know I've said this before, man, but you
I'm the
kind of are the fieldy of the jam band scene.
Is Fieldy Corn's bass player?
Oh yeah,
All right.
just because he's got the low Ibanez, really, I think is what. But he's got a similar slap style. He has like the flea, the vertical slap style. It's not like thumb up, and
Yeah,
he's always got the.
maybe that's why I've liked Corn, and maybe that's why I play the way I do.
I thought that I've told you that before.
You
Is
probably
this the
haven't.
first time? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think it should be like on your bio. I feel like this should be like your live lesson master thing, just in general. Just Ben Carey, the fieldy of the jam scene.
Jam Fieldy.
Jam
Jam Fieldy.
Dude, for Fieldy, I always loved his. He has such a cool, unique style and sound, and that percussive slapping sound is really with like the drop A 7-string guitars. I love that sound. When you hear him like talk with videos and stuff like that, he like isn't really schooled or anything like that. But he's not bringing modal theory to Korn. I mean, he's bringing a sound and a vibe, and more so than like a lot of other bassists in the '90s, those heavy bands, he was doing like something unique rhythmically and cool. We I started a rumor when Murph left Soundtribe Sector 9 that Fieldy was joining as the new bassist.
Oh.
And
Maybe Fieldy just transitioned and became Alana.
yo, I like that. That's a great fan theory.
Yes.
We could get something going in like Fantasy Tour. We could start a little speculation Reddit thread.
I'm
But so I remember somebody sent me a screenshot and they were like, is it true that like Fieldy from Korn might be playing bass for Soundtrack Sector 9? Somebody's like, no, that's some stupid rumor the special guys made up.
Well, it's true that he might be. He's definitely not, but he might.
We didn't know, and we still don't.
That's how great discoveries are made. Like, he hears about it, he's like, wait, what's this band? Like, oh yeah, fuck it, I'll just do that. And he hits him up, and you think they would say no if Fieldy wanted to join the band?
I mean, it's it's like Les Claypool auditioning for Metallica. What would music look like if he got that gig?
Oh God, I think
I'm so glad he didn't.
everyone's better off mostly less.
We need Primus. Their bassist is awesome. I Robert Trujillo or Trujillo.
Yeah, he's the newer one, and he's fucking phenomenal.
Talk about low bass. He's phenomenal, and his son is a fucking rocker too. Really good bassist.
He plays bass too.
Yeah. There was some video.
Reminds me of the Nathan Explosion from Metalocalypse.
Oh yeah.
He's like lead singer turned bassist.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But what you were saying about Fieldy, something I think when I'm getting down on myself and just like being like, oh, I suck, I'm not schooled enough, I don't know enough, and I have time to work on that shit now. It's even just like talking to you and listening to all what you're saying is like, I have a grasp of it, but I'm like hesitant to like try to play along. It's like, well, what if I mess up? I don't really know as much, and but whatever, I'll just put myself out there. But the advantages of not being schooled is that you get to develop your own sound and your own style, and that's really what I latched onto when I was younger. That I'm, also we were talking about comfort zones. One of the reason, I was doing more, and I was talking about this with my students, is that I wasn't confident enough to just do less. Like Alex is so fucking good when he goes into a solo, he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
We're playing a song, studio or wherever, he'll just kind of like lay it down and rip where he needs to. And the more
Yeah,
I
yeah.
play, the better and more confident I've gotten, the more I've been willing to kind of sit back and wait for that right time to pop out.
Yeah.
That's a hard discovery to make. One that,
Yeah.
and I knew it early on. A lot of what I was doing is just covering up for the fact that I don't feel as confident as I should be, and more that I don't want to settle down into a comfort zone that I'm not happy with. So I've built it
Right.
up enough that when I do settle back into just vibing out and just grooving, it's something I can still get down to. And like, we're writing songs, and instead of playing it exactly as it's written or I'm hearing it, it's like, well, adding a little here and there, and I'm getting a lot more specific the more songs we write. It's like, okay, well, here's where it needs something. What does it need exactly? And like trying to find
Right.
that right answer. And that it's almost like a point of diminishing returns where like you put a lot more effort and get a lot less result on the short term, but your overall process is really evolving and getting to a new level. And the level
And
of
you feel like that you're finding that zone more, just focusing more on music lately rather than with the band?
I am, because I'm also expressing and kind of having outlets in different areas. Like with Schwa, I'm
Right.
able to do more production and like that low end manipulation and like just that.
And you like play out a lot in Schwa, I feel like too. I watched some of your stream in Dome Fest, and I'm hearing you do these runs and like some soloing stuff and playing out more than you typically would in like a Pigeons jam.
That's what I want to fucking do all the time.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
all I want to do. I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a lead bassist. I've always said, I don't
Yeah.
want to just lay down like have things going. I want to fucking rip, and that's what I
Yeah.
do in my head. And I've heard, even on guitar, I'm trying to learn more chords and stuff like that. But if I had better fingering, I could rip a fucking guitar solo. Like I could rip on the key
Right.
if I want to do. I hear
Right.
where I should go. Like that's my strength. I know what it should sound like, but it's almost been I've really resisted over the career that I've had falling into that place. Like, okay, just be a bassist here. It's like, no, because I have so much more to offer. It's like, okay, well, now I'm trying to offer it in different ways, with the piano set, with the schwa, where I can just go off on that. I mean, a big joy of playing over a beat when we were first playing in college with Suhan. Shout out to Steve.
Suhan is the fucking man.
Steven is awesome. He's such a good dude.
Yeah, incredible producer.
We would play at Santa Fe Cafe, and we'd have our stuff set up, and he'd be doing like the tweener or like the opening set, and me and Dan would just come down and start jamming with him, just like bass and drums over like a beat. And it was the most
Yeah.
fun thing to do because I could do whatever. The low end's there, everything's taken care of. I can
Bass is there.
bass is there, and I'm just
You're not going to get lower than the sub frequencies he's
Exactly.
producing. Yeah.
and I could just kind of like jam over top of it and just do like rhythmic feels, and that's where I really enjoyed it the most. And that's the joy of working with Schwaz, because I'm putting all
Right.
the production, so I'm kind of earning this place to solo now too. Like I can just kind of like fuck it
Yeah.
out. And that's what on some level, until we develop a lot of our other aspects of our sound, that's a way to bring the audience in. That's what people who know Pigeons are gonna listen for. Like, oh well, here now he's playing bass, but I feel like I have a lot more elements to work on. But the more I start to do that, and with songwriting too, with the piano sets, writing my originals, certain things that might not mesh as well with other guys' approaches, like, well, we need to have it kind of up and high energy and just keep the show moving. I was working on something on bass yesterday that was like kind of a little more chill, and Cece's like, oh, like that, Pigeons should have more songs that are kind of more not the slow dance, but the slower vibe, which we've avoided over the years because we want to have that fucking rip-roaring show. But now that we're able to play
Up tempo, high energy, psychedelic funk.
more space for that, so like I've had to wait to explore those, and it's been frustrating. I don't know if people who are in bands that are growing or even just starting out might seem frustrating to like, this is what I want to do, but this is what we're doing. But it's all building up to that point. Like you have to lay that all out there. And what I'm really noticing is the more I'm expanding out in those other creative exploits, the more I'm able to just settle down. It's like, no, I have a space for that. Let me just do this here. And instead of
Right.
resisting it, I'm getting just so much more enjoyment out of laying it down and like popping out where I can and just listening to Jeremy fucking slay a solos instead of being like, I bet I could do that too, or like I want to do that shit,
Right.
which I do and I have wanted. But how many people would want to be a bassist in a band or play on stage ever? So there's always somewhere where you can look at. I know Jeremy loves playing bass. We should get him on the cast at some point. He played bass in this band, the 14th Circuit. Shout out, really good.
Guitarists are sometimes amazing at bass because they think about it from a different way.
Guitars playing bass, or they're really good at it. If they
Jimi
can,
Hendrix,
bassist,
all along the Watchtower, he plays bass on. It's my favorite Hendrix bass line. It's him on bass.
if you can tell that it's a guitarist playing bass, it's usually not good. If you
It's
can't,
true.
the guitarist, it's pretty fucking solid. And
Yeah, totally.
holds it down, and I can tell sometimes. I think sometimes he wishes he could just play bass for it. Like
Sure.
he'll his octave pedal and sound checks and like throw down a
Sure.
bass line that in the past I might be like, well, I don't want to just play what you're playing, and now I'm like, well, let me pick it up and see where it goes, and
Mm.
I just feel like a lot more collaborative. And I was also talking about this with my bass teacher, how some people throw around the keep ego out of the band so that it serves the, but sometimes you want that ego in there a little bit if it's doing the right thing. Like
Right.
my bass teacher Dave grew up listening to like Rush and that type of stuff, and he
Right.
would hear a bass line and be like, "Fuck yeah, that's the shit. That's what I want to do."
Right.
As a musician and as a purveyor of music in the popular culture, you want to bring that element in and do that to others too. But you
Yeah.
do that while at the same time serving the overall and just finding that kind of meandering balance line within it. That
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like constant, just like learning the modes. You're constantly exploring that emotionally and with your group, and it's just always being turned around. And so having this time to like sit back and really
Right.
learn, and moving next week, I'm gonna have my attic studio area set up, and I'm just gonna be able to sit there and just rock out and do whatever I want. There's gonna be frustrating moments, like learning Logic is just so fucking illogical sometimes. I'm used to Ableton. I'm like, where's this fucking thing? It's hidden under like
Right.
a drop down menu that's like under there. Like, how the fuck was I supposed to
Learning all the new shortcuts, all the new ins and outs of a new system, like
like,
anything
it's
else. Yeah.
not what I want to do, but the more I'm learning it,
Right.
it starts to get smoother and smoother and smoother, and I'm using that as a, you know, inspiration, like what I've learned in the past throughout my life, and going forward, it's like you kind of have to get through. You sort of have to slog through some stuff if it's serving a higher purpose. When I was in school, like I don't want to do busy work. I don't want to like learn so I can work in an office for some fucking douchebag,
Right.
white guy CEO. And I now don't do that, but there's certain, if I had taken certain aspects more seriously, I'd have a much more stable organizational approach and voice in my own life that I now find I'm lacking. So I can
Right.
still be like, fuck this school, but let me get out of it what I can. I was talking
Yeah.
to my therapist about, playing different games. Like I might want to play chess, but sometimes you're sitting in front of a fucking checkerboard and you don't want to just fold your arms and be like, no, I'd rather not play than lose. Well, fucking play,
Right.
lose, and figure out what you can learn.
Yeah.
Try to step up and go to the chessboard when you can, but that's sort of why I'm getting back to basics, as it were, and trying to learn, holding on to what my approach, serves for myself, for the band, and for others listening. Having
Right.
a lesson with, I think his name's Kevin. Sorry, Kevin, I think. Um, earlier today, he's like, when he first saw us, and it's like late night in the workout tent after like some super jam, he's like, how am I going to fucking what band's gonna follow that? He'd never really heard us, and then he saw us playing, and then I like took the jam off somewhere, and I it's like, well, I fucking sucked way worse then than I do now, even though I was good. Now you did it for me. I was like, well, that's what I want.
Right. Well, but that's your personal perspective too, and I think those are all really good points. I think that if I can just comment on a couple of them, like I was just thinking when you're speaking about it, like I think that question of is a solo or just playing music, is it self-serving or is it, what's up, Getty? Is it self-serving or is it serving the audience? I think that's like there's not a clear answer for that, and I think with all of everything we're talking about, it's a constant journey and it's constantly learning and exploring and discussing. There's light bulb moments, but there's not just the hey, I cracked music tonight, and that's what can be infinitely frustrating or infinitely rewarding about it.
At the same, do you notice? Sorry to interrupt, but do you notice that
Yeah.
you're like hitting a ceiling, and then one day just boom, you jump up, and you're like, whoa, I got a lot better all of a sudden. Kind of like quantum.
Yeah, but I don't notice it in like a finite amount of time. I notice that like, hey, I've been playing and working on concepts every single day, and I'm starting to see that pay off. I'm starting to find myself grow in areas that I've always wanted to. I mean, I'm the same. Like when you talk about like when you're listening in a studio in headphones, all you're really hearing are mistakes. It's the same thing with me. Like you're hearing what you could do better. You're hearing what you wanted to do, what you thought you could do better. I listened to a podcast with Danny Carey from Tool, who's like the MVP of their new album, and his playing is on a whole other level than it ever has been. Like, to me, he's the best rock drummer in the world, bar none, right now. And when the guy's asking, like, what do you hear when you go back and you listen to this new album? He's like, I just hear all the mistakes, man. I'm like, what fucking mistakes did you make? But it's like Danny Carey, listening to Danny Carey is very different than anybody else listening to Danny Carey. But to go back to get back to basics, like when we talk about this concept of should I play out? Do I hold back? It's a really interesting thing. And I think just by being aware of it and thinking about it, you're on the right path to finding your voice. I think that there's like, you know, a kind of stigma with bassists that we're supposed to stay in the pocket and stay simple and back up the melodic instrument, back up the horn player, the pianist, or the vocalist, or the guitarist, or whatever, lock in with the drummer, and that's your job, and don't step out of that. And in Berkeley, I like when I reflect on it now 10 years later, it's kind of frustrating that they really shove down your throat, stick to the bass. You're not a guitarist, you're not a horn player, don't play like one. Don't, you know, lock in with the rhythms of the drummers, play root notes or play chord tones, but don't do other. And obviously, you know, with jazz and there's exceptions, but this like philosophy of keep it simple and play foundational like embedded itself in me, and I think like hindered my playing. And I listen back to like old studio recordings of the special albums, and I'm like, damn, like why did I just play the same bass line 16 times in a row when live we do it now? I rip it up. I play around with it. It's more interesting. And that's what, you know, studio playing versus live playing is a different animal too. You're under the microscope.
Other direction too, because I look back, I'm like, well, why did I not hone in on a part before going into the studio and just like, oh, I'll figure it out when I get there. And I feel like I could have developed it a lot more. You know, we're both kind of coming at different angles, and you know, you having that learning experience, and you know, that's again, they're shoving that schooling down your throat. That's sort of one of the reasons I resisted truly identifying until very recently as a bass player. I'm like, no, I'm a musician who plays bass.
Right.
Because I feel like I have a lot more to offer music than just what a traditional bass player is. And
yeah,
this podcast with you and just trying to take it more seriously and like not being a fucking child about things. Childlike, not childish. I read on a biscotti once, which really stuck with me. Mama says, be childlike, not childish.
I like it.
Italian fortune cookie.
Nice.
But no, I've now realized like, well, okay, it's if that's how I feel, it's up to me to identify as a bassist, become, you know, this is what I do. You know, I might do more as well, but this is what I do, and then just slowly expand, just like we expand the pocket. Like you can have the pocket,
right?
You can be weaving the pocket around. You could be like moving it and like creating this
right
surrounding the pocket. You're the fabric around the pocket. You're not, the pocket's empty. The pocket has nothing inside of it. You are creating a pocket, not sitting in it. You know, kind of thing.
Right.
And so if I'm doing the same thing with being a bassist, and now with you, I still will be talking. We'll be talking to Ferrara, or even you'll just be talking at the beginning of the episode. I'm like, man, I'm way out of my fucking depth here. Like, I don't know nearly enough, but I'm learning, and I'm also bringing a different perspective and expanding what I think it means to be a bass player. So if I was watching this, you know, I'm 10 years younger watching us talk right now, I might be like, yeah, you know, I do see the importance of learning, and I want to practice more and learn, but I also see, you know, kind of the different approaches and what's strong about it, and I might have jumped past a lot of those roadblocks I set up for myself a lot earlier and been like, well, no, I am a bassist because I saw someone that more reflected my, you know, if I researched more into Fieldy or, you know, knew more Primus early on or whatever. But
you're probably okay not having listened to much Fieldy.
Say what?
You're probably okay having not dove into Fieldy too much.
Oh man, let's get him on here.
Oh my god, you have to watch the playthrough of him doing Freak on a Leash. It's hilarious. But I mean, what you say, like, and about perspective, it's like, you know, I and we've talked about this before. It's like I feel the same, that the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And when I take that philosophy with my students, where I'm like, look, sure, you know, we have this teacher-student relationship, but I don't know everything. I learned stuff from you. I'm a student of this game, and the most fun stuff. It's like we talked about this even back on the first episode of Brownie, or the second episode of Brownie, like. It's not like, okay, we've gone through everything that I can teach you now. We've gone through the modes. We've gone through the warm-ups. Now let's learn songs. It's like, what's exciting for me is to dive into some of these new concepts, dive into more modal theory, avoiding the root. And as I dive into that, I realize more about it, and then I relate it to you. I'm not the end-all be-all. Here's some videos. Here's some resources. Go look at it yourself. I'll show you my perspective of it. But we're learning together, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, we're still young, and it's like, I'm sure your bass teacher that you're seeing again is older and has more experience and has gained more wisdom on it. But that, I think one of the reasons that my lessons go well are because we have that understanding, and my students are my friends, and we enjoy it. It's the same with the podcast. I just enjoy talking to you, and that's when it's fun. It's not like I'm showing you this and then that. If don't do this correctly, don't do that. It's like, man, we're all just learning together, and whether we're discussing, whether we're playing, if whatever motivates you to learn is the best thing.
Whatever makes you want to pick it up and like and try to play. So this so-called named Kevin from earlier today, I think It's Kevin. We'll go with Kevin now.
Really, I really hope it's Kevin.
Oh man, it's probably Frank. Let's be honest here. No, I think it's Kevin. But he, he's
Okay,
32,
we'll
he's
go
my
with Kevin.
age, and he's just starting to get into like the band life, and he's, saying it's good that
Cool.
he got through sort of his more wookish, get fucked up time, so he can be cogent and present on
Sure.
stage. And it's good to be at that point. And I'm sitting here
Yeah.
thinking, like, man, I wish I knew so much more. Like, I should. This is another thing my bass teacher Dave says, like, don't shoulda, don't coulda. I intend to. I'm going to. So I'll switch that talk now.
Mm,
I intend to learn more. I will learn more. I
yeah.
will deepen my understanding. And thinking that it's like, well, why did I wait until now to do it? It's like, well, I'm doing it now, and I'm in a great position to actually learn and apply that. I can tell my fiance is like, sorry, I got to go do work when I'm fucking having fun playing.
Right.
And that's just
But
such
it's true. But it is work, and it's music, so it's your career. It should be fun. But that's kind of something that I've had to work on. Excuse me, detaching myself from too. Like, fuck regretting what I haven't done. It doesn't matter. You're not going to gain anything from worrying about what's been done. And I know that that's a big Buddhist philosophy too. Just the concept of living in the moment. Don't worry about what you can't control.
Mhm.
And there's always that part of me that's like, well, I wish I just fucking dove into this more when
Yep.
I was going to a music school. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? I learned things in that music school in the classrooms, but I also learned things from positive experiences as well as negative experiences. And it's all just experiences, and now experiences that I can impart to other people. So it's a daily thing, but yeah, I've kind of moved past, I guess, in a way, like thinking about what I haven't done and being more excited about what I'm doing now and what I can do and what I can help others do. And it's just, yeah, I mean, that's the
It's like this,
fucking journey of music, baby.
yeah, baby, the journey of life. It's they're hand in hand. And
Yeah.
doing this podcast, we talked about it for years, and I think both of us were rightfully so a little apprehensive. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, what do we talk
Sure.
about? Good. Like, is this now another commitment? Like, is it gonna be good enough to offer people? And we're
Right.
having enough fun just doing it on our own. If no one watched,
Right.
we just had this excuse to talk together. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
even adding the pressure of like, okay, is it gonna post? When we first started talking, I was like, oh man, I better not sound like a jackass or look stupid. It's like, fuck it. It doesn't matter. That's not what's
Yeah.
important. What's important is that we're
That's
doing.
not it's a casual thing, and it kind of ties back to our conversation, what we were saying earlier with soloing. Where's the line between self-serving and serving the audience?
Mhm.
And I think, like with everything, it's a balance. I think if it's self-serving and if you're enjoying it and learning it, then I think that translates whether to an audience, whether it's a conversation, a lesson, a podcast, or playing live music. Like, a little bit of self-serving it isn't a bad thing. If you're up there playing a song you don't want to play, soullessly not enjoying it, like when I'm playing in like Elk Lodge and Mass, playing Superstition by Stevie Wonder, and I'm sorry, I hate that song. I love Stevie Wonder. I hate it. I played in this GB band in Boston. It's like we'd be playing, and there was some cool, like my buddy Ezra, who's a real talented dude, and we'd play some cool tunes. We'd play like Golden Lady, Stevie Wonder, which is a really complex, cool tune. But then we'd start Superstition, and like the ladies get up, oh, like the older, like the aunts, and I'm like, oh god, stupid drum beat intro. I don't even like our song Jackwise, the studio version, because the intro reminds me so much of Superstition.
Oh, I love that.
That's how much this song has scarred me. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that an epiphany I had, like college-ish area or a little after it, just with the whole self-serving or self-involved or selfish aspects. It was a very easy way to take a spin on that. And it's kind of, I think this sums up a lot of what we were talking about, especially towards the end. You can be selfish. You just have to expand your definition, and this is sort of part of my Buddhist aspect too. You expand your definition of self. What is myself? You just widen it to other and then everything. Eventually, if your self is all of existence, and you're going to be wrong sometimes if you're trying to serve that. You might be serving a subset or like one part of it, versus the whole thing. But if you try to, I'm going to be selfish, but expand what I think myself is, and so you're serving as much outwardly as you possibly can.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And it goes back to that balance of, if I'm enjoying this, then hopefully somebody else can enjoy it too. But as a bassist who get kind of like burnt out on guitar solos, like in jam band context, I know the difference. I feel like I can tell a difference between a self-serving guitarist that's just and just kind of like okay, or somebody that's trying to like tell a story and do something, and somebody like Jeremy who is like a tasteful guitarist and knows notes, and I can tell is listening and isn't just running through like the same old shit in his head. That there's a lot of bands that are in the jam scene where it's just soloing for the sake of soloing,
Well, and
and I have no interest in
he'll
that.
think he had a bad night or like he wasn't playing well. When I'm objectively listening, it's like, well, it sounds cool, like what you're doing, but it's because he's not in the vibe. He's just playing cool shit. And so that's
Mm,
when he feels like he's not playing well or played like shittily. It's like, man, I played shitty all night. Like, you were ripping
mhm,
some fucking solos. It's like, well, yeah, but I wasn't, we weren't grooving together. And
mhm,
that's sort of how he sees it. And that's what it's all about. And when I get into my, like, oh, what am I really doing? How am I serving? Am I good enough to be part of this, like, experience or whatever? Just step back and sit and listen. And that's with life too. You just kind of, and that's a kind of a soft pivot. We discussed a few weeks ago getting together and talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and what's been going on with police and
right.
everything.
Yeah.
And I think I know I can do a lot more, and I've been trying to expand um, my media. You guys have been doing a lot with it and just staying involved, and I really respect that. And I've been trying to like pop in where I can and like make comments or like kind of bring people together. But my talking with my brother's husband, my brother and his husband are on the way down to Asheville to stay there for a couple weeks. And we had a Father's Day dinner with my dad, and he was talking about like how does the band approach it, and how do you approach it, and I've really been just trying to where I can. My role right now, I feel where I can be helpful is by encouraging dialogue and listening, and
Yeah.
that's the same kind of idea. It's just like people of my ilk or that I'm look like, I guess, have been in charge of things for a while, and if I can use that place of like influence and whatever, it's like everyone just kind of listen and like take a step back. The same as within the band, like you're gonna make better music if you listen together, and you're gonna have a better
Yes.
society. You're gonna have a better, approach with everything if you just kind of listen. And that's one thing we've really gotten away from on the internet. Everyone's like, oh well, it's just this fucking trash house of everyone talking a lot. It's like, well, yeah, it's because no one's the people who are willing to listen aren't stepping out there and saying fucking listen. So like
Right.
I need to get more vocal about telling people to shut the fuck up and listen, kind of thing.
And I think that I think it's fine. I agree with you 100%. And I know we were talking about doing it, and because discussion is important, and two white males talking about it is important, and it is important um, I, for everyone to acknowledge this social injustice that's is so ingrained in our country. And if you don't acknowledge it, then it continues. So I get that, but I think that people should feel inclined to speak on it when they're ready and how they're ready. I think there's a lot of pressure on people with social media to buy into trends and if you're not doing this, and it's a witch hunt. They find the people who didn't say this, find them, and that's such a shitty way to look at it. That's such a divisive, shitty thing to do.
And that's something I don't buy into whatsoever. One thing I do with my voice and my brand as it is within my world, authenticity. I'm gonna be authentic. So if someone's gonna come at me like you didn't say something, it's like I know what the fuck I said. If I made a mistake and said something
Right.
wrong, I'll apologize and say that was a stupid fucking thing to say.
Or I'll listen to it. You critique me and help me learn.
Yeah.
If your what's your goal? If your goal is that I said something that was offensive or something that you don't support, then let me listen. And whether or not I can agree with your voice, the perspective is always appreciated.
Yeah.
But it's gotten so, and especially, and the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, this is a complex issue, and it's not gonna be. There's no solution overnight. There's increasing awareness, there's increasing conversation, there's ingraining this concept into society, teaching young people, and that's the most important thing you can do. Uploading a black square on Instagram isn't doing anything.
It's disingenuous on a lot of levels.
It's a trend, and even if the focus, even if the intention is positive to bring awareness, which I truly believe it was, people had issues with the execution, and it's like, well, then you're making people feel trapped and like they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. When people have that feeling, they shy away from it, and understandably so. So I mean, I agree 100% that the discussion and listening and education is so important. The special has done some cool things. We were able to donate some merch money to a local organization, Soulfire Farms, which is a community of African American women farmers local to us. Really badass.
That's cool.
And then we released a show from Philly and donated money to BLM Philly. And look, like, we're doing this because we're trying to use we're not doing it to to prove anything or to show that we're not racist. We're doing it to try and use our platform to raise awareness and just beyond, like, we're three white boys from Connecticut. But that, and I think using a platform to raise awareness and to raise discussion is the best thing anybody can do. But you don't want to feel like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. Artists should still be making art. You should still be promoting your art. You shouldn't feel ashamed about asking money for your art or for a service. But yeah, encourage conversation. I'm so lucky to have this network of students and with you and people and just friends, and talking about it is the most interesting thing. Like, I have a student, Dave McSweeney. He's an awesome bassist down in Atlanta. He played in the band Greenhouse Lounge. He's played in a bunch of other bands. But it's been really interesting getting his perspective down in the heat of a really tense environment in Atlanta. I mean, a few blocks from that Wendy's where an African-American man was shot and they burned down the Wendy's. I mean, he was near that. We talk about Mare Bottoms from Atlanta, who's a woman that we both love, and I love hearing her speak, and he loves her, and Atlanta has this pride and this sense of community that they don't want to see jeopardized, but they want to see the injustice change. So, and shit, man, I'm in fucking Connecticut. I'm not in Atlanta. You know what I mean? I can see people post on Facebook and from Atlanta, but it's not the same as a Zoom call with somebody there. So, I mean, that's, that's as much as I can say. I'm not in a position to dictate or tell anybody what to do, but from my experience, I encourage just talking to people and listening and different experience. Like, we posted a track with Zionai, this awesome, powerful track he wrote called Wake Up. And, I was messaging him and I was like, can I share this? Like, I don't want you to think I'm using you or your music as some kind of personal fulfilling platform or whatever. I just think that this is a powerful song right now. I'm proud that we were three white boys from Connecticut that backed a black man and a black activist and a black woman on this song. I was like, to me, like, I'm proud of that and I want to show that. And we had a conversation about it, and he's like, I think that's cool, man. Yeah, like, do that. He's like, I think you should mention that as white men, you have to be it. He said it's important to say that you're vocally anti-racist. It's the whole concept of it's not enough to be quietly non-racist. You have to be vocally non-racist. Right. And he was the first one that said that to me, and so I incorporated that in some of, like, the social media stuff. But I just appreciated the perspective of a black man, a black artist, and an activist from Oakland, California, who's also a father to three people, who's a spiritual guy that I just respect, like, and have been fortunate to work with. So, just educate yourself and listen to people, and don't feel bullied into doing something or saying something that you're not comfortable with. Learn, listen, and then maybe you'll feel more comfortable eventually to, like, speak out against it. But
you sort of
that's kind of my rant on it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start with your own kind of world and work your way outward.
Right.
Yeah, early on, Pigeons didn't really want to get into political aspects, and I was resistant. I was like, this is such an important thing to do, and I was the political one listening to NPR, and I was a little resistant to that decision that we made as a group. I was one aspect, vocal in one area, but we made a decision as a group, and I respect that. And now I realize the power and the importance of that is that we're giving a space for people to love and come together without having to involve that aspect. And from that place, we can then talk more. Like in the flock, someone will post something about it, and I'll just poke in and be like, make sure everyone's talking. Everyone's like, we're all people. And yeah, it's great to say, like, people shouldn't see color. Well, too bad. It's fucking, people see it. There is racism out there.
It's important to acknowledge. Denying it doesn't help. Acknowledging it, and even if you don't know how to speak it eloquently, don't be afraid to discuss it.
Let your voice heard, but it's also what you're saying, like, don't feel pressure unduly, because then it will come off as it won't be real and it won't be authentic.
Yeah, you lose that genuine authenticity.
I had a long talk with my friend. I posted a picture of my yoga mat at Home Fest, like, hey, I just did yoga, who else is doing it? And someone's like, oh, cool mat, where'd you get it? And I was like, oh yeah, my friend Johnny. And I hit him, tagged him, and then hit him up. He's he says, I mean, he's half black, but he's basically like a redneck country guy. He's like, just because my neck ain't red doesn't mean I'm not from the country. But I've seen him post about, he got more into these types of conversations over the past few years, but he hasn't really been super loud about things now. He's like, we had a really nice long talk. I was just asking him, like, even stupid things like, I mean, is it, if I'm see people at a rally, like white people, are they allowed to go like this or not? Like, it's not allowed or not. Like, what do you think? Like, just dumb stuff like that I just have no fucking idea.
And we're just looking for cultural insight from somebody with a different perspective than you.
And I don't have to listen to what he says and be like, well, I'm going to definitely do it that way. It's like, well, I now have that incorporated into it. But he was talking, saying that he wasn't really jumping on the whole bandwagon. He calls them the social media justice warriors, which I kind of liked instead of the
That is,
social
yep.
warriors. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's just like getting that perspective and just having those conversations. I don't know if I would have reached out to that if I didn't think it was as important. And so even
Right.
little, just kind of reaching out is just you're just putting a little light out in the world wherever you can and doing.
Yeah, man, and just those small conversations. It's like, the people, the Disco Biscuits raise. I mean, I've heard different numbers, but I've heard around like upwards of $70,000 raised, for this Black Lives Matter organization, which is incredible, and that's so much more than any money that like my band was able to generate or other bands. But I think that yeah, money gets stuff done, and like I said, I appreciate athletes, artists, whatever you are. If you have a brand or a platform, using it to raise awareness is a good thing. But like, don't worry about like the monetary value of it. Just reaching out and having a conversation, like, you are helping progress. You are. It's just about. It's just there's so many stupid people in this country that are rooted in their ways, and it's not their fault that they're stupid or ignorant. They're raised that way. We've both driven through places that have been, not exactly socially aware.
Some of those places I would expect, we'd play a show. I'm like, who the fuck's gonna be here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama? And the fucking most woke ass people come to the show.
Right, sure, right, yeah, totally.
Where are you hiding? Versus somewhere in, New York or Boston or something, and people come in just like, oh, whatever, everything's just well and
There's
good.
ignorant, dumbass people everywhere, and there's woke, intelligent people everywhere.
Ignorance and stupidity can go hand in hand, but sometimes they aren't. Like some people can process, and they have found ways to further their ignorance because they're smart enough to. And
Yeah,
that's the reason you got to reach out and like, no, 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 I love you, and I want to hear what you're saying, and like, tell me
right,
more. I hear what you're saying about the statues. Getting rid of history is gonna, you're doomed to repeat it. George Orwell. That's how you,
right,
come down with the fucking dictatorships, stuff like that. At the same time, you know where these statues came from. Like Jim Crow Reconstructionist eras were put up to, subjugate people and make them afraid and fearful.
right.
So it's like more understanding the better. But bringing it back to
It's a discussion. That's
bringing it back to the whole music aspect, the reason I brought it up was talking about listening in
yeah,
music, how you can just create a much better, you want to do more. I want to play more here. I want to bring it out. I want to have myself involved to make it better. But sometimes if you listen to the whole big picture, you can really see where it's your time to step forward and your time to sit back, and that's your call as a musician. And
right,
if you're listening to this and you're not a musician, you can use those ideas in your life. You're painting a portrait, you're painting a picture every day the way you live. That is your art on the world, no
right.
matter what you're doing else. And you have to know when you got to throw that, color on, and then, sit back and leave empty space on it,
And being and accepting that there's certain things that you don't know, and that, like we've been talking about this whole podcast, it's the same with, if we tie in these issues, accepting that there's things you don't know, accepting that you're not perfect, that you're an eternal student, that you can always learn more. That willingness to accept that is
can't all be
important with everything.
we can't all be fieldy.
And Feely, I haven't heard you speak out yet, dog. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know
What's
what
up?
that's about. But so hey, look, I'm glad we had the conversation about it, Brench, and I think just having the conversation is great, and I encourage anyone else. But before we wrap up, there's a couple other things that I wanted to ask you about, talk about. We talked a little bit about Home Fest, but I mean, I'm just kind of curious. What was the overall response to it? What was like the feeling in the Pigeons camp? Was it a success? How do you measure success? I mean, just from an outsider perspective, it was a weekend. I was going up to visit my girlfriend in Boston, but I had the Schwa stream bumping. Greg sent me the link because I did a little video for it. I don't know if you saw it with my little Luke Beeman bobblehead back there.
I'll rewatch that.
I don't know when it is in the stream. I filmed a little video for Greg. So he gave me the stream or the link on the XL Live, and I got to listen to a bit of your stream, and then I got to catch a couple bits here and there of just Pigeons playing in the studio. Studio sounded really good, sounded really mint. I heard you guys do National Anthem by Radiohead, which the special is also doing on our teen stream on Thursday. So yeah. So yeah, I don't know. So I just wanted to get some get like your opinion on how it all went down.
Long story short, it was a really good way, with all the limitations we currently have, to reconnect our community, our tribe of sorts, and like bring new people into the fore who hadn't, there's a lot of people I've been talking to. This year was going to be their first Dome Fest, and they haven't quite made it out yet, and they missed out on it but
Right.
they get that vibe, that coming together aspect, and the work that Greg did, putting all those videos together, and being the MC and just spearheading that whole effort.
Mans was working hard. It was an intense production.
Special, unique thing, and I think it really connected the fans and the people, and people were talking about it. Definitely a few people saying that I looked pretty good on the weight.
My man slimming down. He's playing out more with Schwa.
Day 4 of my push-up challenge done.
Hey, how many push-ups are you doing a day?
Today was 60 seconds between each set. Today was 4, 8, 6, or 4, 6, 8, 6, I believe. So 4.
Okay.
60-second rest, 8 push-ups, 60-second rest.
Yeah, man.
Something like
Good
that.
for you. I do a little interval training like that too. I'll try and do 10 10 sit-ups, 10 push-ups, and then do a little run, and then I'll increase it 15 sit-ups, 15 push-ups.
And then you go
Feels
over
good.
position real quick, and then jump back into the.
Well, bro, I'm starting to play. I don't know if you can see back. I've got a 7-string Ibanez with fanned frets. I'm borrowing it from Johnny. A friend, Paxton, lent it to him, but I'm full on gent now. So, to play this thing properly, I need to like roll up my sleeves.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Get my pasty whites on, and
Yep.
and I need some flex, which I don't have much of. So if I'm gonna play fan frets, I need some biceps to back it up.
Like lean over it and kind of like envelop it into your being.
You have to like really, flex when you're playing. All right, I'll put these away. Sorry for everyone watching.
Whoa, don't shoot. But yeah, so Homefest was good, and it was great to have people come together like that. It made me more than ever miss playing out live, and I haven't missed touring, but I miss playing live.
Sure.
And I'm actually starting to miss touring too. I'm walking around. I'm like, this would be a perfect day to just be at a festival, just walking through. And
the more warm it gets, the more you miss. I definitely am gonna miss seeing so many friends out in like just a fucking field with live music this summer.
To a point, touring was just like, all right, I'm over this. Like, am I not ever gonna want to tour again? And
Right.
I'm very much ready to do it.
Yeah, a break and a reset is cool, but yeah, shit, we all miss it, right?
You guys have any plans coming up or anything in the future besides your?
Yeah, so we're doing our Cheen Stream 2. It's Thursday, so it'll probably have already happened by the time this episode airs. But
We also play National Anthem.
We already have done it. We've done National Anthem. I got borrowed a gnarly fuzz pedal to get it out. And this one was different. The last one we had tried to do a multi-angle thing, but we were having software like tech issues with CB, who we work with on this podcast too. Shout out CB Video Marketing, the god.
Thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, we love you, buddy. And so we ended up just going like iPhone, which we always knew we were like that. All else fails, we'll go iPhone. But none of us are really stoked on the quality of it. And it was a casual thing, and it was an interactive Q&A, and it was fun. We did it. But now we were like, all right, let's do it for real. So we had CB, my brother Beeman. They had a switcher, they had multi-angle, and then we plugged everything into our soundboard, and then John has been mixing it. So this will be multi-angle and soundboard audio, and that's like way more exciting to me. It's still a live set. There's no cuts, there's no breaks. We play for an hour. And what's funny to me is that like we weren't super strict about it, but we literally played an hour from 8 to 9, which is when it's going to debut. And I was like, this is so great because, we're playing up on a second floor. There's all these windows. And so you get that feeling of starting in the day, seeing the sun go down at nighttime. So it'll be in real time. It'll stream from 8 to 9 p.m. on Sunday. But it's really cool to be able to have like a product that now we feel really good about putting out there. It's not that pressure of it's live. But having us mix it, keeping it in house, to an extent is even cooler than having a sound engineer mix it on the fly because we know these songs
Exactly what you want.
We know different parts of the song where John knows. Okay, I know to bring up the bass here, things like that. And he sent me a mix last night, and it sounds really good. So I'm really excited for that to come out on Thursday. And then we are doing. It's pretty much confirmed, official now, but a private drive-in show on Saturday. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it was something it's been going, like our management and booking agency has been going back and forth. It's up. I mean, it'll probably have already happened when this airs, but it's in the Lake George area. We've had to keep it kind of hush-hush. It's limited capacity, like 100 cars, but he's had.
Because otherwise you'd have a storm of like 30 people coming in.
Cannot accommodate our listenership here.
There's too much of you.
I know. Too many rampant bassists running up to Lake George. But they've had it. They followed all safety precautions. Friends like Aqueous are seeming to do this and pulling it off, and people are being respectful and cool. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
Is there a sound? Or is it going through FM?
So it's gonna go through an app you can download on your phone, and you can listen on Bluetooth in your car, and then you can also just like tune into a radio station. I think there's going to be a small PA system, but I think it's like encouraging people in the car listening that way. So it'll be interesting. Well, the next episode I'll talk about it, and I'll let you guys know how it all went.
Yeah, we're gonna do another one soon. It's been far too long, and
yes, we are gonna try and get back on schedule. You were super busy with Home Fest. I've had a lot of other projects and have been now getting out a little bit more. But no, this is a priority. I think it's going to be good to get back on track, and we have some cool guests that we're starting to reach out to. We just signed with Royal Artist Group, which I'm really excited about. Thank you. Yes. And it's exciting for the podcast because I've already been talking to some of these agents. I mean, some of the best bassists in the world are on Royal Artist Group, and the people that Adam Neely, who I've been referencing a lot, who has 1 million YouTube subscribers. I've been getting really into his videos. Such an intelligent guy, would be such a cool guest. Michael League from Snarky Puppy would be awesome. Yeah. Even I would love to have Mono Neon. I don't know how much he does things like this, but I mean, what a character. What a fucking trailblazing bassist. John Davis from Nerve, who owns the Bunker, who's produced a lot of albums. Consider the Source. My buddy's Escaper. Shout out. Just put out an album produced by John Davis. He's an awesome. Say that again.
Consider is on RAG.
No. Escaper put out an album on Rope-A-Dope Records, and John Davis does, I think, work for Rope-A-Dope, or he owns a studio in Brooklyn called The Bunker, and that's where Escaper recorded it. I know CTS has recorded albums there, but Jojo Mayer and Nerve is on RAG, and that's
Gator showed us Jojo Mayer and Nerve. That shit is
man,
beyond.
I mean, Jojo's regarded as one of the best drummers on the planet, and he is. But the Nerve itself as a show, it's some of the most interesting live improvisation I've ever seen. Anyone looking for just some new kind of fusion, trip hop, drum and bass, ethereal jazz soundscapes,
post one of their
Google Nerve
Back2Basics page.
Yeah, let's definitely plug it.
That more regular. They have some. In addition to, I was talking to one of my other students about search engine optimization for his brother's gutter business, and he's like, "Yeah, you just gotta post on blogs and put shit up." So we just gotta be, throw shit out there and just get people's engagement.
Gutter making engagement as applied to bass podcasting. We're gonna find some kind of crossover.
Gutter done,
dude. But so that it's exciting. I'm excited to hopefully get in touch with some of these bassists, bring them on to the podcast here. So it's been cool, man. Yeah, we've been working with these guys for a couple months now, and the conversations started happening really when quarantine started and everything started to get switched up. I mean, we were on Madison House for under a year, and we were really excited about that, and we loved our agents, Rob and Jordan. And then, just full disclosure, at the end of the podcast, whoever else is listening, whatever, I can just say this shit. Rob and Jordan got let go, and a lot of people did in this music industry, shakeups, and people getting let go. And their entire rosters got dropped, but Madison House expressed interest in keeping LaSpecial on, which was cool. And they were like, we can move you over with these other agents. And I won't mention these guys by name. They were both cool, but we just didn't really know them. And it's a pretty hard time to test the waters of that relationship with a new agent in a band. We loved Madison House and we loved the booking agency, but I started talking with my friend Steve Contreras, who now is booking us at Royal Artist Group, and he was like, what's the deal? I know things are getting shaken up at Madison House. Are you still there? Would you be interested in coming on the RAG team? And I was like, well, definitely interested. And once we started having some phone calls and conversations, it just became a no-brainer and an awesome opportunity.
Ragtime, baby.
It's ragtime, man. Yeah. So, just another example, I guess, of a running theme on this podcast of things that seem like shit, but we just got thrown a fucking curveball. Things are in a state of disarray. There can be opportunities if you are not afraid to find them.
Listen, be open to it, and take them as it comes.
Yep. Yeah. So, hey, I think that's a pretty good that's a good way to end it right now, right? Well, end this thing on a good note.
Ayo. Wait, what's
Like a G harmonic, I'm thinking.
I was gonna say A flat, so basically.
Oh well, half step off, but
All right, you do your G harmonic. I'll do A flat 9.
okay, yeah, go ahead. Oh yeah,
And that's how we ended on a good note.
that's how we end Back to Basics on a good note. G harmonic with an A flat minor add 9. Yeah.
And we'll have a theme song at some point. I want to write some podcast theme music.
Okay, let's do it. I'm down to start getting cracking on. I got some recording projects I'm excited to get cracking on today and tomorrow. Let's get this Back to Basics podcast.
Thanks to everyone out there
theme
watching.
song the world needs.
Appreciate each and every one of you and giving us a reason to shoot the shit here. And glad to get back to basics.
Getting back to basics, y'all. We appreciate you guys, man. We'll be back with more episodes soon. So
I'm gonna go play chess with my neighbor.
I'm gonna go take a pee.
See ya.
All right, buddy. See you next time.